Good morning, Lit Youth. So, this week we're going to be starting a new series called In My Opinion. Now, if there's one thing that's true about you as teens, it's that you guys have opinions. Think about the question, what is the best topping on a pizza? Some of you guys immediately, you're like thinking, oh man, that is pepperoni all the way, definitely pepperoni. Others of you, you're like, no man, it's like sausage. Some people are like cheese, just plain cheese, that's how you go. And then for some of you, you might be saying pineapple and ham. And then the others are just like, are those even toppings? What? So you guys can have some strong opinions on things like that. Other things you might have strong opinions on are like, what's the coolest app out there right now? Is it Instagram? Is it Snapchat? Or is it TikTok? What's the hottest thing right now? Maybe it's something about fashion. You have an opinion on what the coolest sneakers out there are right now. Some other things that we develop opinions on are about people. We develop an opinion on whether we like someone or whether we dislike them, and whether we think that they are good people or bad people. And we also develop opinions on what we think of the decisions that they've made. Was it a good decision? Was it a bad decision? What should they have done in this scenario or that scenario? So those are all examples of kinds of opinions that we can have. So as you guys can see, there's a wide variety of different things we can have opinions on, and there's also a wide variety of reasons why we have opinions and reasons why we share our opinions with other people. Sometimes the opinions that we have and the opinions that we're sharing is because we don't know how people are going to judge us. And because we don't want to be judged for our thoughts, we share our thoughts and our feelings in an opinion format. We'll say, well, you know what, like in my opinion, I think that, and we think that that's going to soften things up a little bit. But the same can be true in the opposite direction. Sometimes when we share our opinions, we're actually using it as a way to justify judging other people. For example, how many of you have heard something like, well, you know what, in my opinion, they're just being stupid. Or, in my opinion, he's just a jerk. Or she's just crazy. So there's several different ways that you can express your opinions and everything. Now, the deal is that sharing your opinion and having your opinion isn't always bad. But when you share it to create a negative thought or a feeling or opinion towards someone else, trying to make other people think about them in a bad way, that's whenever you're passing a bad form of judgment on them. And you're not just sharing an opinion, but you're really creating a judgment against somebody else. And the deal is that whenever we share opinions in this kind of a way, whenever we start going around and gossiping about different people and talking about how we think about them, what our opinions of them are, you guys can see that a lot of times that ends in a really bad situation, and it gets there really quickly. So why do we do this? Why do we feel so free to share these opinions and gossip about each other? Well, I think that there's several different reasons that we have for this, for feeling like we can gossip about each other. And I think sometimes the reason is because of our own insecurities. It's easy for us to redirect other people from thinking about us and the securities we might have by pointing out and showing the insecurities and the problems that other people have. So we share our opinions about those problems because we don't want people to see our own problems. Sometimes we also do this gossiping, sharing these opinions because we want a way to just bond with our friends. It's kind of cool whenever you have something to say in your friends group and it's something that they think is juicy, a juicy piece of gossip or whatever it is. And, it's just cool to feel like you're in with them, And so sometimes you're willing to share your opinion, a negative opinion about someone else, in order to get a foot into your friend group and to be more liked with other people. Sometimes it's just a fun thing, you know? Think about all the TV shows that we have that are all based on drama and about all of this gossip and all this kind of stuff, sharing these sometimes bad and negative opinions about other people. And the deal is that the reason why that's a form of entertainment is because sometimes people just think that that's a fun thing to do. Some other reasons why we might gossip and share these kinds of opinions is because of competition. You know, think about sibling rivalries, you know, and, you know, just how you just have this desire to want to be better than your brother or your sister or whoever it is. And so you're willing to share a negative thought or opinion about them because, you know, that's just the first way you think that you can win something, you know, win an argument against them or something like that. Another reason, and this is probably one of the most tricky ones, is perhaps it's true. You know, perhaps the opinion that you have and the piece of gossip that you're sharing is actually a true thing. But that still doesn't mean that is a beneficial thing to be sharing. And another one is concern. Maybe you're genuinely concerned for someone, and so you're not viewing it as a form of gossip, but you're still talking about them and sharing opinions about them that might be influencing others and their thoughts of that individual as well. So a lot of times we share our opinions because we are trying to hurt other people, because we are trying to judge them. But sometimes when we're sharing our opinions, we're not actually intending to hurt someone, but we still see what happens in the end. You know, think about how many times that you want to share a secret with a friend, you know, and you're thinking like, you know what, it's okay if I share my opinion or I share this piece of gossip with them because no one else will ever find out about it. You know, it's just between me and my friend. And so you say like, psst, hey, you know what I think is blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, then you share your opinion. But then a little bit later on, that friend ends up talking to another friend, and then that friend talks to another friend, and they're all thinking, oh, well, they know better. They know not to share that thought with someone else. And the next thing you know, your opinion has spread throughout a whole friend group, you know, and it's affected the way that they're thinking about someone else. So we can see that even when we're not intending to hurt other people with our opinions, sometimes we can hurt them with our opinions. So we have to be careful in the way that we share our opinions with others. So what should we do? How can we stop this trend of saying negative things and hurting the people around us? Sharing those bad forms of opinions. Well, what I'd like for us to do is look in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, and I want to see what Paul has to say on this, because Paul was one of the most influential speakers of his time. And in this chapter, he's instructing the Ephesians on how they could be different than others through the way that they spoke. So in verse 29, it says, "Don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful, so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them." So whenever we read in this verse, we see him use the word foul or abusive language. And the Greek word for those terms basically means rotten. So he's saying that don't let the words that we say be rotten. And so just think about like a rotten apple. Now, thankfully, this apple is not a rotten apple. You know, it's a couple weeks old, but it still has its shape and it's still a good apple. But if you imagine this apple had like flies all around it and everything that's all around it, and it was like all brown and mushy and all this kind of stuff, that really wouldn't be an apple that would be appetizing. You know, like if I took a big old bite out of that, you know, and it was, you saw all the flies and all that kind of stuff, and you know, like, I know you can't smell because this is like on a screen, but if this was smell vision and you could smell like the rotten apple and all this kind of stuff, I mean, you would be cringing. You'd be like, ugh, that's disgusting. Why would he do that? So it's the same kind of a question, why are we going to allow the words of our mouths be filled with rottenness, and filled with a decay that can affect others and decay them as well? So, but that doesn't really answer the question of what we can do to change the way that we're speaking, you know? So I want us to look at Matthew chapter 15, verse 11, and see what an even more influential speaker has to say on this. I want to see what Jesus has to say on this topic. So in Matthew 15:11, Jesus says, "It's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you. You are defiled by the words that come out of your mouth." So what he was saying is, it wasn't the words that, or it wasn't the things that they were eating that, were going to rot and decay them, but it was the things that were coming out of their mouths. The words that coming out of their mouths was a reflection of the rottenness that was already happening inside of their hearts. Whenever we speak in a way that is judgmental towards others, and we're trying to make others think in a very bad and a negative way towards other people, that shows a rottenness in our own hearts. So what this is saying is, if we want the words of our mouths to not be rotten and filled with decay, but to be good and whole and pure, and to be helpful to other people, to be encouraging, as a reflection of the verse that we had read in Ephesians, then what Jesus is saying is we need a change of heart, actually. And that is what the gospel is all about. It's about God changing the hearts of humankind, taking that rottenness and that decay that is inside of us and extracting that out of us and giving us a new good heart that can bear good fruit, that will have good words and a good speech that comes out of it. Not things filled with judgment, but things that are filled with love and are a reflection of who he actually is. And so that's what the gospel is about. And I think that this is really the powerful thing that we need to remember and we need to take away from this lesson, is that if we want to not be people who are filled with judgment and people who are filled with that rottenness and decay and that kind of a hate, then we have to be people who has had our hearts truly transformed to be made in the likeness of a God who reflects pure, true love, so that we can actually love the way that he made us to love other people, so that we can speak in the way that he made us to speak. I want to share with you one other verse, and that is in John 15, verse 4. And in this passage, Jesus says, "Remain in me, and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine. You cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me." So this is going to be kind of weird, but what I want you to imagine is that Jesus, the Holy Spirit, is kind of like fertilizer, okay? And what he's saying is that whenever you have a grapevine or a tree, it needs to have nutrients in order to produce fruit. But it also has to have the right kinds of nutrients to produce good fruit. And if it doesn't have the right kind of nutrients, then if it bears any fruit, the fruit that it has is going to be bad, and it's going to go bad very quickly. Now, in that passage, Jesus is saying that he was the vine and we are the branches, and that if we want to be fruitful, if we want to bear good fruit, then we have to remain in him. We have to be transformed by him and be connected to him in order to have the words of our mouths changed to be things that are good and wholesome, actually. So that's what I want you guys to remember out of this, is if we want to be wholesome, if we want to speak in a good way, and not be filled with rottenness, not be judgmental towards other people, and if we don't want to be sharing opinions that are going to hurt other people, then what we need to do is we need to learn how to filter what we are saying by being connected to the God who wants to direct the words of our mouths and help us to be honest reflections of the love that he has for humanity. So I hope you guys enjoyed the lesson today. I want to just give you a couple reminders. One of them is that tonight is going to be the first night that we are meeting back together again in person since COVID had hit. So super excited and pumped about that. If you guys want to come and join in with us, make sure that you go on the bottom of today's lesson, and there's going to be a button there that says register. Make sure you click that and register to come tonight. It's going to be starting at 4:30, and we're just going to be hanging out, having a lot of fun, playing can jam, playing cornhole, have a volleyball out, different things like that. Make sure that you bring your mask. Also, on the bottom of the page, there's another button. It's called guidelines. And so make sure you click on the guidelines and read through that so you know how to prepare for tonight's activities and everything. Also, if you're not able to join in person yet, then that's perfectly fine. We're going to have an online Zoom opportunity for you. It's going to be starting at 5:15. And what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be having a Bible study on James chapter 1. So you're going to be able to engage in the Bible study through Zoom as well. I look forward to seeing you guys tonight, whether on Zoom or in person. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your Sunday.